Jen Bernard, thank you so much for being here for Confidence Conversations.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Me too. I think, the work that you're doing is so impactful because the reality is we all have different abilities, functions, and ways that we show up in the world, and you're helping to empower a generation to show up authentically. So tell me about some of the work you're doing at bADDass Coaching and start off by explaining the name to our listeners.
All right. Well, so bADDass coaching kind of started when I was looking into my own ADHD. I was actually talking to a friend of mine. She didn't have a lot of people to rely on to even discuss ADHD with. She was kind of ashamed about having it. And she was also living in Central America. So down there, the way that mental health is addressed down there is a little bit different than we do it up here. Sometimes it's kept a secret. And so we started talking, and she was talking about how ADHD coaches exist. And I had no idea. I was like, wow, I've just been going through it, raw dogging ADHD my whole life. What is this? So, I looked into ADHD coaching, and basically what I found out was that it didn't just help me understand my own ADHD, but I found that it was a powerful tool that would be able to help me help others really embrace their neurodiversity and their differences. I mean, the way that we function differently and our brains function differently, and the way that the workplace has been created, the way that just the world in general has been created, has been very neurotypical focused. And so when it comes to our own neurodiversity, we're kind of taught blend in, fit in, and don't let it show. So when I came up with bADDass coaching, I wanted us to really feel like we could embrace our inner badass. And bADDass is spelled with ADD in the middle, so that we can really use our strengths that come from our neurodiversity and the way that we look at the world differently and think about the world differently, and really put it out there to say, hey, we can contribute. We have these skills, we have these superpowers, and we really are bADDass. So when I do work with clients, I really try to help them understand that, no, it's not a flaw. It's not something that you should be ashamed of. It's not something you should cover up. Let's figure out where your strengths lie, and let's figure out how you enjoy interacting with the world around you so that it doesn't feel like a challenge, and really allow you to shine.
Thank you for that. And I love that you mentioned that your diversity is your superpower. And a lot of times when we think about diversity, right, it's like the visible layers of diversity, what people can see. And we've gotten really good about like incorporating people of different hues. And now we've been more inclusive in terms of like other like physical layers of diversity that we can see, whether it's size or different capabilities. But often what we don't talk about are the invisible layers of diversity and how that is a superpower in and of itself. So I would love to understand how your ADHD is your superpower.
Well, that's really funny because when I was diagnosed with ADHD, I was 15. And at that age, you understand it as two things. You're hyper and you can't pay attention. And you don't understand all of the other things that come along with it. And, at this point, you're 15, my mom's just trying to make sure I get into college. So actually, for my college entrance essay, I said, I wrote my essay about ADHD not being a weakness, but being my strength. And I do think that one of the things, that comes along with that is we are creative. We do think outside the box. We see things that other people miss just because, not because they're not looking, but it just doesn't, hit them in the face the way that it hits us in the face. And what a lot of people misunderstand about ADHD is that it isn't that we can't pay attention. It's that we can't pay attention to one thing. We're constantly paying attention, but we're paying attention to everything around us. And our brains don't filter out what's important and what's not. So in that way in itself, we see things that others miss just because it's coming at us. And those are sometimes the things that are the most important. And to kind of piggyback off of what you said about diversity, 2020, God, what a year. But in itself, the focus on diversity got much greater, but it was that focus just on different skin tone. And, granted, George Floyd, all of that definitely impacted that, and changing Aunt Jemima and making sure Uncle Ben's isn't racist and all of this stuff, and it's like, okay, that's great. How is it helping the bigger picture? And when I think about, yes, it helps us as a society, but when it comes to the workplace and businesses and actually the day-to-day of daily interactions, and where we interact most with people is in our work environments, that focus on diversity isn't going to be what gets the job done. The color of somebody's skin isn't going to determine whether they are capable of doing a job better than somebody else. It's what's up here in your brain. And so when it comes to neurodiversity, I think there's just not enough focus on the fact that these different things, us thinking outside the box and being able to connect dots that other people can't connect, those are the things that are going to contribute to that workplace environment more so than who somebody's sleeping with at night, or where they go to church, or where they practice religion or anything like that. And it really is just, it's hard to get out that the invisible disabilities aren't really disabilities at all, but that they can contribute to the bigger picture.
Yeah, it's truly diversity in every sense of the word. But I want to get to the heart of your story and how you became a coach, because you have a really interesting and wonderful journey. Because I know that you didn't always think that you would become a coach. In fact, I think you're working in the marketing industry. So tell me about your entree, if you will.
That is true.
Internationally.
So like I said, I was diagnosed at 15 and the goal was to get me into college. And when I went to college, I had big dreams of being like an architect. And that died fairly soon, because I thought, okay, I'm in college, everything's fine. I made it to the finish line. I'm going to stop taking my medication. And that's what I did. And also, again, with not understanding my own ADHD, I thought medication was only to help me excel in a test-taking situation or a study situation or something like that, because that was the only way I saw it being used in my high school life. So cut to college, I'm unmedicated now. I'm trying to get through. After college, my mom's worrying about what I'm going to do. Everybody's going to their internships and things. And I end up going and becoming a bartender for years. I always had in my ear, there's my mom saying, I didn't spend, X amount of money on college for you to become a bartender. So I would then spend probably about the next 20 years, 15 years roughly, trying to find myself in a world that wasn't made for me. Like, I have so many interests and so many different things, and my focus can be pulled one way or another, and I will hyper focus on something. And without having that reined in, I was, jumping from job to job, not really understanding how they were connecting. And it would be something I would excel at, but it wasn't really fulfilling the goal of my parents of saying, like, you got an education, use it, So I ended up when I graduated college, I had a degree in art. Actually, I went from architecture to art, and I moved down to Florida, where I was able to actually use that degree. And I thought that was like, ooh, you made it. You're using your degree. I was working at a newspaper doing graphic design, and I did graphic design for a while. which then led me to marketing. They were very connected. And, you know, my mom was like, wow, you're very good at this. So again, in my head, I have, you're good at this, stick with it, you know, and it's not necessarily that it was my passion, but the way that my ADHD brain works, I'm great at, you know, business names, puns, my graphic design skills, like I can create logos and things like that. So it really just evolved from starting off in graphic design, having marketing jobs along the way. And then, you know, but I would always still be working in restaurants because I enjoyed the connection to the people. I wouldn't necessarily call myself the biggest people person, but like it was fun to just have those interactions and meet new people and see new people. So when I moved to Central America, I worked for a company down there doing real estate marketing in Belize. And again, I was like, all right, this is just the trajectory of my career. It's graphic design to marketing, real estate, whatever. And then after I left Belize, I moved down to Guatemala, where I got back into the restaurant industry. It was easy for me to do down there. And I was trying to figure out what I was going to do that would help me basically thrive. Which is how, you know, one day I was just behind the bar, somebody came in, they said that they were in need of marketing, and I just blurted out, oh, I'm a marketer. I was like, I own a marketing company. I didn't own anything at that point. But I ended up working with them, and then word of mouth got around, and I did end up starting my marketing company down there. And then at that point, I kind of connected, I niched down into specifically hospitality marketing, you know, and then that's when I really felt things come together. I said, wow, you know, this whole time you've thought that your career path has been disjointed and you weren't really fulfilling anything. And now hospitality marketing, you have all the knowledge from hospitality, you have all these marketing skills, put it together, put yourself out there. And then if you've been in the restaurant industry, a lot of us, you know, I used to actually be a bar owner as well. So like a lot of us, we thrive with ADHD. We thrive in those situations because it's always constantly changing and different people and putting out fires and solving different problems. So I thought, you know, when I do go into ADHD coaching, even if it is to learn more about myself, I will be able to better serve my clients in this industry, because a lot of the owners do struggle with attention and all the executive functioning aspects of the job. And then, you know, once I got to actually helping people and seeing that it was more important, not as important to get the job done as it is important to feel comfortable with the job that you're doing. You know, because you can tell, one of the things I didn't like about marketing when I was doing it is there are 8 million marketers out there just doing their thing. And what information am I personally providing to somebody looking for marketing help that every Tom, Dick, and Harry marketer out there isn't giving them, you know? And the more things come out, the more we're trying to play catch up. And with the ADHD brain, it is very hard for us to do. And it's just not the way that we work. So I found that once I learned more about all of the ways that ADHD affects us, it was easier for me to help people find their own path in that world of, you know, okay, I want to get this done. How do I do it? Well, let's talk more about finding out about how you work, where your strengths are, and how you can apply that to get this job done. Not how the job is done, but how you specifically need to move forward to get this done in a way that's comfortable and authentic to you. Which is really where my whole message of bADDass coaching comes from, is like, I want you to not only be able to run your business authentically, but your life live your life authentically and stop masking, stop trying to keep up in a neurotypical world, because we can't compare ourselves to XYZ person that's running their business in a completely like spreadsheet manner. We're not spreadsheet people. I mean, I love a good list, don't get me wrong. But yeah, it's just I I just found it that we struggled in our authenticity, and we struggled to really allow ourselves to be ourselves in our businesses, and especially again when we're working at home, a lot of people found it difficult to figure out why they could get stuff done in the office and then they couldn't get it done at their house.
Yeah, I think
And
that's really key too. But I think I want to hone in on the fact that your story really is a full circle one,
yeah,
right? Of going and discovering, what works for you, what isn't, from going off of your medication to working in hospitality to then being able to combine that with your degree. And I think it really goes to show the fact that life is not linear and
mhm,
nothing is wasted. And I know that sometimes after we do something and don't directly apply it, or maybe, things happen and it doesn't feel like it's for our good in that moment. And then you look back years later and see, okay, I needed that experience. I needed
yes,
XYZ to even be where I am today. And there's that moment of realization and gratitude for that. But what did it take for you to really realize that? Because there's one like living it and then being like, all right, why I'm here and it's making sense for me now and I'm living and walking in my purpose.
yes. So um after I got certified as a coach, and at this point, um I guess at the end of 2020, I had moved back from Central America. I was now living in Albuquerque, which is where I am now. And I was able to get back on my medication because I realized, like, I really just thought that was a key component in me moving forward in anything that I was doing. I I knew that I needed more focus than I had, and there were a lot of distractions, and I wanted to really say, okay, like, let's get this coaching done and figure it out. So after I got certified, um, I was like, this is where I had been going wrong in my own business.
Mhm.
I had been looking for coaches and people that were focused on the marketing side of things, but I was like, how is it that they are able to put themselves out there and do all of these things and organize their business in this way, and I can't seem to put out a social media post in under 3 hours?
Yeah.
And that constant comparison was really bringing me down. And I knew that, especially at my age, I'm almost 45. It's a struggle for people my age to fit into this digital world of, these kids that are coming out now that are coaches that are really successful at like 30. They've grown up on their phones, they've grown up on their iPads. And in the, 35 to 50 age group, we're just we're looking at everyone in awe of being like, how are you doing this? And then especially with the ADHD brain looking at it like, oh my God, figuring this out is so hard. So in realizing that that's where I had my misstep in my own career at this point, owning a marketing company and saying like, I keep trying to do this and it's not working. I'm sure others are doing the same thing. And that's really when I said, that's my purpose, is to help others who are, I don't even know, Gen X, I guess, Zennials, Gen X, age group, to really not put ourselves in that corner with people that are doing these bigger things, and really just say, okay, what can we do? What are we comfortable doing? How can I show myself and put myself out there in a way that like really feels right? because it's really easy for it to feel forced and wrong. And then as soon as it feels wrong, then what's wrong with us?
Mm.
And I feel like we've already been going through that so much of what's wrong with us. and how, especially, again, Gen Z, they've really got it. They're just like embracing everybody. They're forging their own paths, and they're saying, no, this is what I'm doing. And yeah, we rag on them and we're like entitled or whatever, but it's like, no, we have like this blanket of shame that we're trying to come out from underneath, and so that's when I realized, I was like, if I'm feeling this way, I know other people are feeling this way, and we have to do something about it. And then so, like with coaching, I feel like I can contribute a lot. I know I mentioned I'm going back to school because I feel like there's just more. Again, it's the bigger picture. It's not just coaching the individuals out there, but helping others understand the powers of neurodiversity. And it's not just ADHD, it's autism, it's everything. It's all of that, kind of just, we think differently, but it shouldn't be a detriment. It should be looked at as a valuable contribution just as much as the next person.
I agree. And I think, when we really hone into that and realize that we're able to tap into that level of diversity, put people in the right roles to be able to express themselves in a way that is authentic. I know you mentioned, the Gen X versus Gen Z, and I'm a millennial. It's somewhere in the middle between like that shame and self-expression. It's a really interesting place to be in. But when you mentioned showing up authentically, I think no matter what age you are, it's so important, but so hard to do because there's, what we say about ourselves and the narrative that's going on in our head. There's what's, socially acceptable. There's friends in our family think, and then there's what makes you money. And then you're caught somewhere in the middle of that, trying to find out like what's authentic, but like won't get me canceled, but will be a person. And
that's exactly right. Yeah.
I think when we learn to just go with that vein of authenticity and say, honestly, to hell with the system or like what's happening, not that we shouldn't follow rules and laws, like please do, but like outside of that, if you're not hurting anyone, there's no harm in expressing yourself and being your authentic self, because that's why we're here and that's why we're created. And I think that we need the power in the space to be able to tap into that. So what are some of your recommendations for individuals who are struggling? Because it's hard to show up authentically.
Well, I'll say that, and it kind of actually is a tie between the two. With marketing, it was very difficult for me to put myself out there because, again, it was something that I was good at, but it wasn't something that set me apart from the 8 million other people that are out there doing the exact same thing. And, and then when I was looking back at the clients that I was working with, I'm like, all right, we're trying to get you to stand out from the 8 million other restaurants that are in your neighborhood in general. You know what I mean? So I really looked at those two things and then tried to apply it to myself and say, you know what? It's about target audience. And it was harder for me to try to play the role of marketer than it is for me to just be my ADHD dumbass self, And the thing is, you are going to attract your target audience. You are going to find your people. Your people are going to find you. So if you're putting out this facade of being whatever it is, it's going to be harder. Even though it feels like it's hard to come out as yourself, it's going to be harder to maintain this mask of whatever, from now on. If you put that person out there first, whoever you interact with is going to expect that person. And that's just going to be so mentally, physically, and emotionally draining that it's not going to be worth it. And it's not going to be what makes you money because your heart isn't going to be in it. It's not going to be what feels good because it is weighing you down every day. You're going to wake up and say, oh, I got to be this person. It's so much easier. And trust me, whether you're scared to like just, let your freak flag fly or whatever, let that flag fly because your people are going to see that flag and they're going to say, that's where I need to be. Yeah. And so there's just so much more. It feels better when you live authentically and when you're doing things that feel good and are true to you. And again, that's where, in my coaching, that's what I really try to impress on people is like, when they're trying to make change, don't make change because you feel like you're supposed to follow this or you're supposed to do it this way. What actually feels good to you? Because if it feels good and it doesn't feel forced or faked or hard, you are more likely to hold on to that and do it, which will get you to where you need to be instead of trying to do it the way that everyone else is doing it, so just like when I decided to get out of marketing and go into ADHD coaching, and I said, you know what, this is where it's going to happen because I can't hide my ADHD. It's that even as a marketer, I would try to, let me go into my little interview and try to nail this client. And then all of a sudden I spit something out and I'm just like, oh, you're an idiot. But it's me. I'm going to be that person. I'm going to spit the dumb things out. I'm going to say the stupid things. I'm going to cuss like a sailor probably. But like, as long as I'm saying this is me, take it or leave it, that's when the people that are supposed to be around you are going to be around you. That's when the money is going to come in because people are going to say, I would love to work with you because you're my people. Yeah.
It's incredible. And I think it takes so long to get there, but once you do, it's great. But we put up these walls or try to fit in or do the things, right? Like what's the status quo? What are we supposed to do? Okay, let me check this off because it's a form of protection. I think as humans, we just have this innate desire and almost a need going back to like the hunting and gathering days to like fit in to survive. But we don't want to be rejected. And so there's a part of that comes and like wants to, okay, I want to fit in. But then there's the other part of us that hasn't quite accepted our differences for themselves. We can't sit with ourselves, for example. And I think when I learned to sit with myself, and I'm still sitting with myself, it's not like one-time process. Like I'm not going to lie about that. Like I have to sit with myself like every day and accept whether it's the mistakes that I've made, a crazy comment that I made was like, oh, wish I didn't say that. Wrong time, wrong place for a conversation, like whatever it is, accepting that, forgiving yourself, like giving yourself grace, but like also accepting like in the instance that I didn't hurt anyone and this is just like one of my quirks or this is something unique to me, being able to accept that and know that like it's okay that I acted differently than other people in the group because that's what makes me me. And the more we do that, we give other people permission to be themselves as well.
Exactly. And that's really where confidence comes from.
Yeah.
That is exactly where confidence comes from, is when you are able to sit with yourself and give yourself grace and say, I may have made this mistake today, but tomorrow I'll try to be better. Or I used to beat myself up all the time if I wasn't constantly working. Yeah. If I gave myself a day off, I would be like, you're a piece of shit human who can do nothing, and it's just like, no, you needed this time off because that's you telling yourself like, breathe,
right?
And when we can't look at ourselves and accept ourselves for who we are, how are we going to expect others to as well? Because as much as we think we're hiding it, other people can see that we are struggling. We're all struggling on the inside to say, like, who am I and where do I fit in this space? But the sooner that you work towards figuring that out and feeling comfortable with the things that you do, that confidence of saying, look, yeah, I might walk into this room and say something dumb today, but like, it's fine, because tomorrow I'll be a better Jen, like that's what's going to come out. And that's what's going to attract people to you. And that's what's going to make you want to spread your gift. Yeah. I mean, when I think about how hard it was for me to put myself out there in any business that I've had, it's because I had imposter syndrome, and I was feeling like I'm sharing this, but am I really, like, who is this that I'm sharing? Am I sharing Jen, the one that's going to, help you come up with your marketing plan, who like loves this? Or am I sharing Jen, the ridiculous problem solver that is doing this because she just wants to draw on her computer all day? Like, So
That's so interesting that you say that, because I've never thought of it that way, because we come to work or wherever we show up with these different, there's different parts of us. We're so multidimensional, multifaceted, and there's different parts of us that have different needs, right?
mm-hmm.
The need for us to like come in and show our level of expertise at the level of the ego. There's like the subtle body that just wants to like exist and like and be and like let me like express myself and like whatever that looks like. And so every interaction that we have, essentially those different parts and elements of ourselves are at play, and sometimes they're competing against one another as well. But I think that it takes a level of vulnerability to be able to just say whatever comes out is what's needed in this moment. And like you said, it takes confidence to even be able to express that. Like, vulnerability is not a weakness, it's actually a sign of strength.
Exactly.
To be able to know that and say, whether it's I'm different in this way, or like for me right now, like I'm struggling in this area, like I have to be more open about that so that I can have better relationships or have better circumstances in life.
Excuse me. I just finished a book, a great book. I actually read it. I'm not like even the fastest reader, but I actually read it twice in like the last month. It's called Love and Work by Marcus Buckingham. And it was talking about this teacher, and to ask yourself, like, it was to ask yourself 5 questions, because I know that when I just said that about marketing, like, is it marketing that I love, or is it this aspect that I love of it? You know what I mean? Like, is it just Jen who wants to make money and come off as this, or is it Jen that wants to sit at her computer and design logos all day? Like, who is it? And he said that there was this teacher that did an experiment with his kids, and whenever they filled up this box, I know I'm going to get some of this wrong, but they fill up this box of like things that they love. And there was one student, and he loved to play a guitar, but it wasn't that he loved to play the guitar all the time and using this general. It was like, okay, who do you love to play the guitar for? Where do you love to play the guitar? Why is it? And as he asked the student more questions, he found out that it wasn't that he loved to play the guitar. He loved playing his guitar to a group of small friends, because then in that way, he didn't feel like he was being judged. He loved to sing his own songs, because then he was sharing that with, like, his people and things like that. And so it's not, we have to stop trying to fit ourselves into categories just to fit in. Like, I'm not just Jen, just another ADHD coach. I'm Jen who likes to work specifically, not with children, but with, adults, and specifically adults that are in my age range, because I feel that we've shared the same experiences. Even more specifically, ones that are trying to start their own business, because I know personally we can get bombarded with outside influences trying to tell us that this isn't the way that we're supposed to do it. But knowing that there is no supposed to, there's no way that it's laid out that we're supposed to do. Yes, there have been ways that have been successful. There have been ways that have not. what ways are successful for us to make it work. And I think that that's one of the things is we have to stop trying to place ourselves in these categories when we're not just another marketer or another podcast or another whatever. We each have these individual things that we enjoy about what we do that make what we do so special to others.
Yeah, thank you for that. And Jen, you know, this is Confidence Conversations. I want to know, what does confidence mean to you?
Confidence to me is just embracing yourself for who you are with all of your imperfections, you know, anything that you see as a flaw, really just taking that and turning it into a positive, you know, like it means being able to take anything negative and take a lesson from it or turn it into something else so that it doesn't continue to stay inside of you and you know, ruminate. And because that rumination, that's what's going to bring you down. If you dwell on the conversation that you had 3 months ago where you probably said something dumb and you're like, why did I do that? You know, that's going to affect how you move forward. Instead, take it in, understand it, and then move forward with the confidence that you learned from each of these situations. You know, don't move forward with your head down. Move down confidently, knowing that you saw what you did, you took it in, you thought about it, you gave yourself the grace to, you know, embrace it and deal with it and look at it from that perspective, and then move forward with that confidence. That, you know,
it's a really beautiful definition, because it's like almost like confidence as this like power of transformation that gives you the ability to move forward and like embody the power of like a good moment, a bad moment, whatever. Yes. But no matter what, you're moving forward empowered, having been empowered by everything that you've gone through. I love
that was great.
And before I let you go, do you have any words of wisdom, any final words of wisdom for us?
Take the mask off and let your freak flag fly.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Jen, for being on Confidence Conversations.
All right. Thank you so much. And I hope, you know, if anything, you know, just be badass. Go into the world and just be a badass. You know?